Hello and welcome to today's edition of the Wealthy Lightworker. I have Wendy Collier here. Welcome, Wendy.
Hi.
It's such a pleasure to have you. I'm so excited to share you with our audience. So Wendy empowers ambitious, accomplished, purpose-driven women to live free from the inside out. And I love that. I mean, that's just, it's what Lightworker does, right? So before we jump in, we're going to go ahead and get started with our nice deep breath together. So breathe in. Okay. Now that we're in the moment, Wendy, I just love to start with your story. So at what point in your life did you realize that you had a calling to do this kind of work, to be a light worker, to empower other people?
I think it started pretty much like a feeling without the knowing. So there was a feeling that I was meant for something something special, I should say. And I didn't know what that meant. I knew that there were specific life circumstances that I had been given that were extremely challenging, that carved kind of a unique character within me in terms of resilience, healing, transformation, things like that were necessary for me to survive. And so I knew, and it felt like I was being prepared for something, and prepared in a way that I didn't quite understand. And I would say that I felt that way as young as like 16.
Wow.
And so I journeyed, through high school. I was actually on my own at 16, completely independent from my parents, and needed to finish high school on my own and figure out how to support myself, and I did. And I went on to college. I put myself through college, graduated, and got a degree in psychology, feeling a need to really help adults who were abused as children. And so I always had a heart for people that were hurting but seeking healing. And I was very drawn to people that needed to heal, and I myself needed to heal. So I was in my own healing process and helping and feeling compelled to help other people heal, which is a sign of being a light worker, is that draw to heal yourself and to facilitate the healing of others. It's not, I see it as a facilitation of healing, helping people heal and transform their lives. And so then I went on to corporate America. Right out of college, I was recruited into one of the biggest companies in the Silicon Valley right before the huge tech boom happened. So I was part of building, helping to grow the businesses that actually are some of the leading companies in the world right now.
Wow.
In technology, and felt very disconnected from myself. I mean, in many ways, it was extremely beneficial. I learned a lot of professional qualities and skills that I use today in my work. I definitely use my marketing skills and business skills in my business today with my clients and for my own business. And at the same time, on a soul level, on a deeper level, I was yearning for something more meaningful, because I was just helping to market hardware and software products. It had nothing to do with healing or transformation or any kind of personal growth for others, right? So I did start some businesses on the side, knowing that I was probably meant to be in business for myself, and I dabbled in all kinds of different things. Real estate investing was one, and that company funded the freedom of exploited children. So I was getting closer to my soul fuel, what I call my soul fuel. And we'll talk about that. And so funding the freedom of exploited children and being, part of the process of helping them be free certainly felt more satisfying, right?
So is that your nonprofit?
No, it was actually, at the time, it was a real estate investing company.
Wow.
And I never registered as a nonprofit. It was actually an LLC. And then I just gave the money to that cause.
Oh, that's amazing.
After expenses and everything, I gave.
Yeah.
So it was called Freedom Investment Group, which was freedom, the word freedom. It's all about helping to free children, exploited children. So that was the beginning of me feeling that sense of deep gratification, deep satisfaction, knowing that my work was contributing towards something that I really cared so much about. But I wasn't able to quit my job. I wasn't making enough to quit. And so I dabbled in lots of other things. So I started coaching, and I sort of inched my way into now a full throttle SoulFUEL business. And it was about 5 years ago, almost exactly, that I was sitting in my offices at one of the top companies in the Valley, and I was just on the verge of taking the leap, of finally kind of cutting the ties and figuring out this business and not giving myself any other options. When I hired a coach, I flew back east and did a VIP day with her. And during that VIP day, she said, "You're a light worker." Wendy, you're a light worker. And I said, "What is that?" I have no idea. I'd never heard of it before. I had no idea what that was. But the second she said it, it felt resonant. It wasn't like I immediately said, "She's crazy." You know, it felt like truth was there. So that night I went to my hotel room and I immediately, you know, looked it up. What is a light worker? And learned about it. And all of the qualities that were listed in the articles I read were exactly me. It was hard to deny that. And then everything began to make sense. It just made sense because I know, at least for myself, and probably a lot of you listening, probably you too, Colleen, like for so long I felt so weird. Like I felt I am just not normal. Like I don't fit into the normal anything. And I wanted to, and now I celebrate that uniqueness as opposed to rejecting it and wanting to conform and be more normal. I now celebrate it, which is a complete flip. So how many years do we go with, you know, kind of self-rejecting? How many years do we do that to ourselves? And how detrimental that is. And what is possible when we fully embrace and we look in the mirror and we say, "This is who I am. I love that I am this. And I will give these gifts to the world." And the fact that we have these unique qualities is why we're able to facilitate so much healing and transformation. If we were like everyone else and just the norm and just the average Joe or Jill or Jack or Jill, you know, typically those folks, while nothing is wrong with that, aren't able to see life and see people through the eyes that we do. And it's in that unique sight that we're able to facilitate healing and transformation in our own lives as well as in the lives of other people. Yes. So that's where, I mean, I landed in a very solid place with that of acceptance. And it was right at that moment. And it was, I think it was like almost to the week 5 years ago today when that coach said, "You're a light worker." And it took time for me to assimilate that and really integrate it. And then to also adjust my business ideas and my business model to align with that. In other words, we can do things that don't sync up really well with that, who we're meant to be in the world. And so it became very important for me to find my SoulFUEL, which is something that I ended up trademarking and registering as a brand. That's SoulFUEL. You want me to talk a little bit about that, Colleen?
I was just going to say, so tell our audience what SoulFUEL means to you.
So SoulFUEL is the reason you're here on this earth. And some people call that life purpose, but the problem with the word life purpose is it's a bit overused. And also many women I have found feel their life purpose is to be a mom or to be a great mom. And there is nothing wrong with that. That's like number one. That's like a super important job.
Yes.
But SoulFUEL, I believe, was there before you had kids.
Yeah.
It'll be there long after they leave the house. Same with any other role you take on as a wife, as a community member, as a volunteer. SoulFUEL has nothing to do with any roles you take on in your life because your soul doesn't have a role.
Yes.
It's here, you're embodied. And the reason that I call it SoulFUEL is that when you know what this is, when you really tap into it, you plug into it, it is the best source of fuel for you to overcome the inevitable hurdles and obstacles and physical realities of life once you know what that is. Because it's something so much greater than you, that it provides you with like energy and spiritual fulfillment unlike anything else you've ever experienced. And so therefore it becomes this daily ongoing place of fuel. And I tell people that it renders you unstoppable. Of course, we're going to have hiccups in the process, but it really does get you on the path of unstoppability. And it gives you that sense of absolute purpose and meaning to your life every moment. When you're tapped into it, you have to remind yourself, but it's intended when I go through the SoulFUEL discovery process with clients, the whole point is to have them get super clear on what that is. It is not vague. Once you figure it out, it's clear. And then to take that and make it the foundation of your life and your business or career or whatnot, and just unleash your soul fuel through your work in the world, is the best way to use it. And it's also, that's when you're going to feel the most lit up, the most satisfied, the most just fulfilled, because you're being the light worker you're meant to be.
I love that so much. Oh, so I think there's probably a lot of us watching, listening, who are thinking, okay, that's beautiful, but how do I know? How do I know what it is? Where do I even get started? So what would you suggest to them?
Well, there'll be an opportunity if you want to take this further in the SoulFUEL discovery process. Would you like me to just get them started, Colleen, with a couple tips at the moment?
Yeah, maybe a couple tips just to kind of help them ground those ideas.
Yes. Okay. So the premise is that a particular life experience, usually like a turning point in your life, it could be a breaking point, illuminates your soul fuel. It's not that event is your soul fuel. It's that it illuminates your soul fuel. So I would suggest that you think about a moment in time that changed you forever. Mm-hmm. And typically it's the moment that led you to searching right now. Mm. It's the reason you're listening to Colleen, you're watching these interviews. It's the reason you're on this event. It's like something is stirring in you. What triggered that? What was the catalyst event or moment? Typically it's a moment, but it could be a series of moments that led to you waking up.
Yeah. And it's so funny, the minute you say that, I think of, for me, I've lost a lot of people in my life, a lot of young people. And I remember, how quickly those deaths forced me to go, well, why am I here then? If life is so transient, if it's, what's the purpose? And I think it's often like the hardest things that make us who we are.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, it's unfortunate. I mean, we're taught to reject pain, to reject suffering, whereas, some of the greatest gifts come through it. And it's so hard to see when you're in the moment. Right? Yes. I love your signs. I love your signs.
Oh, that's so true, though. We are taught to reject it. We're taught to, it's only positivity, blinders on. When we actually let ourselves go there, that's the soil that your soul fuel can grow from, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And just being willing, I think just being willing to look at the gift inside of it is the first step.
Yes.
So some people may be in the midst of it right now. They may be in the midst of a divorce, a job loss, a death. You're in the middle of a lot of grief, regardless. There's a loss, right? And so you may not be able to see the gift, but you can begin to be open, hope in your heart a little bit to what gift could there be. I have a client right now named Tracy, and her husband died in August. He died just a few months ago. Yeah. And they had like 30 days between diagnosis and death. He was in his 40s. It was a shock. They have 3 young kids. Oh. And she's in the middle of the grief. And at the same time, she hired me to help her get her SoulFUEL business going and to launch it. And I'm really amazed and inspired that she did that during this grief period. And what she's discovering is, as she's going through SoulFUEL discovery right now, the first part is that she's able right now to find those gold nuggets inside of the grief. And she can already see the meaning behind his death and what it's spurring on in her life and how it's going to help her to help others. But sometimes we need a little more distance than that. And we need a little more time. For me, it took, it was almost like my moment in time was when was a long time ago. I was going to give away my age, but it was a long time. It was, it was like 12 years ago, not too long. But I'd say it took about 7 years for me to finally heal enough, honestly, for me to recognize the gift in that moment. And it was a domestic violence situation that I was at the hands of with my fiance. And, that is the basis of my soul fuel. That illuminated my soul fuel. Yeah. So one of the first steps is to look at those moments. What is the moment that triggered a series of things that really changed you forever, set you on a whole new trajectory? And that moment with my fiance set me on a whole new trajectory in my life. And so looking at that and asking yourself, what are the lessons I'm meant to walk away with? And what can I help facilitate for others as a result of this experience? Because I went through this. Like my client, Tracy, she's going to be helping so many women who have dealt with big losses, maybe not necessarily a death, but she's looking at working with women who are in flailing marriages and cleaning up the marriage before it's too late. Because her marriage was flailing. They got back on track. They ended up having a blissful marriage before he died.
Oh.
And had they not taken that time and gone through the healing in the marriage before he died, you can imagine the regrets, right? So she's going to be helping women to bring their marriages back to wholeness and joy and all of that, so that they can not have those regrets in case of course, someone's going to die at some point, right? Yeah.
Wow. So, I love that you really define the SoulFUEL process through something that can be looked at as negative, because that's, again, it is that moment of illumination. It's when you are forced, I think of like immediately images from like the tarot pop up, or, the I Ching, which is one of my favorite tools. And there's so much talk about, like lying on your back, like feeling defeated, but seeing the stars.
Oh, yes.
Something beautiful there, even in this darkness, there's always a glimmer. And with that, I think the next step for them, right, is to figure out how they can take that SoulFUEL and actually monetize it and make it into an actual business. So how do you figure out which of your passions, or how to do that and monetize it?
Yeah. So SoulFUEL is just one part of it. I actually divide things up into 3 categories in terms of a successful business formula, which is, or a career formula, whichever way you want to look at it. So SoulFUEL is the spiritual reason behind what you're doing. It's why you're doing what you're doing. It's the foundation of your life, not just your work, but your life. It is who you are at your core. You are expressing it in your personal roles. Write this down. Your personal roles and your professional roles. Like, it's just who you are. It's who you are right now, whether you know about it or not. You're just trying to figure it out. So SoulFUEL is that. And then the second sort of category or area I talk about is your marketing, your messaging. And that is different than SoulFUEL. So a lot of people get these things confused. They feel like they need to talk about their why they're doing their work in their marketing. There's could be a place for that, but it's not as important to people who are hiring you as you speaking their language and you making it clear you understand who they are and what they need and the value you can add to their lives, right? So marketing and messaging and copy and even articulating what you do verbally is a separate and distinct area. And it's extremely important to be successful in business or your career, whichever way, because you're marketing yourself if you're going for a job and your resume, right? And your job interviews and everything else. So the third is your fulfillment, like what you do inside the work you do with clients or in your job. It's like what you're doing, what you're actually doing. And when we talk about soul-fueled businesses or soul-fueled work, we want to look at the passions you have that are most monetizable. In other words, that you can succeed most at, or you're more likely to succeed with. And you're using that inside of the fulfillment of your work. And you're using it in your marketing potentially if you're really good at marketing. So I happen to have a marketing background, and I have a passion for marketing. So I am monetizing my passion for marketing, but most people don't have that. Sure. For most people, it's inside the fulfillment of the work you're doing with clients. So for example, if you know that you're a light worker, or you suspect you are, and you have a passion for helping to facilitate transformation in people's lives, that's a passion that you have. Now, whether or not you can monetize it, here's the question. You need to ask yourself at least 2 questions. And there's a potential third question if you want, but at least these 2 questions. And that is, do you lose all track of time when you're immersed in this activity or this way of being or this skill that you're expressing? Do you lose all track of time. You have no idea where the time went.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if the answer is yes, great. Then you ask yourself a second question. You ask yourself, have other people recognized this gift in me? Have other people validated it and noticed this is something that you're good at? And those two, and there's a third, which is just the understanding there's something powerful in this passion. Let's say you have a passion for writing, but you're not writing very much, but you know that when you write, you feel passionate about words and you lose track of time. Then you also want to look, have other people told me I'm good at writing? If you have all three of those check marks next to writing, then you know that's an easily monetizable passion. Because you might love it, lose track of time, but no one's told you you're good at it, then other people may not hire you for that.
Right.
Right? Does this make sense?
Mm-hmm. I love it. I love that. And it kind of, when you talked about losing all track of time, it reminds me of just the process of flow and how important that is to, you know, success, because it's when we're disconnected from that things feel heavy, that they feel, you know, and it's so easy to feel like, oh, well, I mean, we were talking about this before we hopped on. I'm through this process, I'm having to learn, you know, the back end of how to promote this and how to put out the emails and all that. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. This is not my area of expertise. And you put it perfectly when you said, you know, that's why you pay someone else to do it, because they are passionate about it.
Yes.
And it makes sense for them to do it.
And they're good at it.
Yes. Right.
Right? I don't believe in square pegs and round holes. I don't do that. You want to find what your square peg is and what your square hole is, or whatever. You know, you want to like find the fit for you, because otherwise you're going to struggle, suffer, and there's no point in that, because each and every single one of you are designed for something unique and designed for something that aligns perfectly to your gifts, to your experiences, your talents, your skills, and everything. So why settle for anything else?
Preach. I love it. It's so true. And it's such a good reminder. And, you know, so this is beautiful. So when you talk about your fulfillment, you know, like you said, is writing one of them? Like for some people, it's going to be writing. For some people, it's going to be coaching. For some people, it'll be speaking. Are some other examples of that?
You mean skills-wise?
Yeah.
So yeah, I do a full inventory inside the SoulFUEL discovery process that has you like literally check mark, you know, all of these things. And there's also a skill.
We should talk about that. I think we should talk about that, because you are offering something incredible to this audience. And before we hopped on, you know, we were going over it and you were like, this is honestly never offered at this price except once in 5 years.
For 5 days. It was only offered for 5 days.
I'm so honored that you all watching and that I myself have access to this offer, because it sells for, and you were saying, Wendy, it sells regularly for $4,000, and that's not just a value, that's what it sells for.
Literally,
offering it for $97.
I know.
So you're crazy. No,
I can't help it. No, this event resonated with me so much. It was a no-brainer.
I'm so glad. And I love that you have your own moment where you were told you were a light worker, because I think many people of us watching had that moment where we went, what the hell does that mean?
Right.
So let's talk about that. So what does that include for us that decide to purchase it?
Yes. So it's 12 steps. And what it does is it takes you from kind of really not knowing what you're here to do, what your soul fuel is, to complete clarity and knowing what you're here to do. And if you are interested in starting a business, it is specifically designed to walk you through the steps to understand what that business could be as a result of your soul fuel. So there's 2 parts to the process. The first half, the first 6 steps, are all about your soul fuel and what you're here to do. Mm-hmm. The second six steps are, okay, so what would that be in the form of a business? Or if you're currently in business, it will help you to determine whether you're positioned properly and whether you need to pivot and do something a little bit different. If it's a career situation, I have had clients go through SoulFUEL discovery and have, you know, careers in nonprofits, careers as actors, you know, various different industries in careers that it's also been applicable to.
Yes.
So it walks you through the steps of the SoulFUEL piece, and then which passions to monetize and which skills, which are different than passions, are most fulfilling for you and enriching and monetizable. And then what your niche would be, or who your clients are, your customers are, transferable to jobs in the sense that your employer is your client, basically, and your customer. And then there's a piece around bringing it all together, really getting clarity about what all this means, because basically it unearths so much information about yourself, and it provides you with so much rich information, because you're basically reconnecting to who you really are. So it's going to feel somewhat confusing at times, and then it'll feel unbelievably exciting. And so what comes with it to help you through some of the confusion and some of the stuck points are 3 audio files where I'm teaching you, and each file covers 4 playbooks. So you just listen to the audio, and then it'll either you can do the playbooks before or you do it during, but it'll explain any gaps that you may be experiencing or any confusing parts. And then you also receive 2 Q&A calls, pre-recorded Q&A calls that answer most commonly asked questions, and a private session with me to help you work through any outstanding confusion you might have. I've never had anyone go through the process and walk away not knowing their soul fuel and not knowing how that translates into a business.
That is so amazing, Wendy. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm so excited to offer it to you, Colleen. I am your people. Super excited.
I'm so glad. And it just sounds like one of those things that you found your soul fuel, and in so doing, you get to help all of us do the same thing and talk about, that is the definition of a light worker. It's what you're doing. And one of the things that I'm just curious about, because why not? We're talking about money on this series.
Yeah.
So maybe you can tell us a couple of experiences of maybe clients or yourself where you've seen people shift from a lot of debt and a lot of, angst around money, and shift it into a different mindset when it comes to that.
Yeah, money, I have found that, and this is a little bit of a surprise in my business, the amount of sort of shame that women have in particular around money, around earning money, about saying the word.
Yes.
Even admitting that you want more money, and I didn't even say the word until maybe the last 3 years.
Wow.
I mean, say it as often as I do. I'm sure I said it, but just, to be able to say it without fear or reservation has been a major transformation. So I obviously had some shame issues around it as well, but I've had my own money journey. I think it's a particularly challenging conversation with light workers and people that are more sensitive. There's this sense that, I shouldn't be charging, or I shouldn't charge too much, and so forth. And I think one of the biggest breakthroughs that women and men even can experience around this is that, your gifts are worth compensation. And actually, in the exchange of money between 2 parties, there's a great deal of reciprocity is a very natural part of our world. And so it's necessary for people to really experience the transformation they're seeking, to invest in themselves. And for you to receive money for that enables you to get your message out there even more. And it enables you to stay in business. It enables you to pay the bills. And it's incredibly important. And if you know your soul fuel and you know how that's going to translate, then you are worthy and deserving of full compensation for that. So there's so many directions I could go with this, Colleen, because money is a big issue. Magical money tip. Mm-hmm. I would say too, one of the biggest breakthroughs that my clients have had around money is when they realize that, because I have them run a pilot program when they're first starting out. They run a coaching program that's a pilot program, and they offer that for free to no more than 3 people the entire life of their business. And what they discover between the pilot program people who don't pay anything and the clients that they enroll who start paying them is a dramatic difference in commitment level. Yeah. And the commitment level translates into results.
Yes.
For their clients. So I see it as a service to be charging for my services, because I know that will help transform the lives of my clients in committing at that level. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes so much sense. And it's so refreshing to hear it. And it's something that we've heard a couple times on these interviews. And I just think the more we can remind ourselves of
Yes.
that reciprocity, you know,
Yes.
I'm doing it myself with my own clients where they're like, oh, can we barter for this or that? And I'm like, oh yeah, you know, and I think it's a good idea. And it never is. It
No.
never is.
Right. And you hear that from coaches, and then yet people will still go out and, you know, try to do it. You just have to learn yourself sometimes.
Yeah.
But I do know that.
Sometimes go through it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I just know that struggle is not spiritual. Like it doesn't, to struggle doesn't mean you're extra spiritual. It just means you're struggling.
Yes.
I mean,
I'm writing that down. I love that. Struggle is not spiritual. Because you know what? I think there really is this belief that it is, that, you know, you have to be a wounded healer. You have to be, you know, and not to say that the wounds don't fuel us, because we know they do.
Yeah.
But the wounds are going to happen whether or not we cling to them, you know? Let go, release, move on. It's okay. It's okay to know your worth and to know that struggle is not spiritual. I love that. Oh, Wendy, I could talk with you all day.
I know. This has been so fun. Thank you.
We're coming to the close, but I have to say this has been just full of so much value for our viewers. I'm so grateful to you for taking this time. I know you're going to have a ton of people enrolling in your SoulFUEL Discovery program. I mean, that discount is incredible, you guys. Take advantage, because it's really special. And I'm just so honored that you would offer it to us at that rate. And
you got it.
You know, it's just so great to have you. So Wendy, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks
Appreciate
to everybody.
All right.
Yeah.
Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Bye.